Hi guys, so today I will be shedding some light on a very rare minion build, and as you can see from the footage, I'm using Reapers instead of typical Spectres. But be warned, before watching on, this build is very expensive and in my opinion only viable with high budgets. So if any of you have any spare divines or mirrors lying around, you can definitely give this build a try. This build is more for boss farming, it excels in single target, so any uber boss farming will not be an issue. This build, however, performs only decently well in mapping, not to the standard of Kinetic Blast, but it gets the job done. Let's start by taking a look at the gear that I'm using. I'm using a mirrored weapon. You can get this off from TFT or simply buy it off trade. Once in a while, you will see this weapon selling for slightly cheaper than the mirror, so keep an eye out for it. When we look at the stats, it has +1 to socketed gems, and bear in mind that all minion skills benefit from gem levels, so the more the merrier. This weapon also provides socketed gems is supported by critical strike chance, multi-strike, critical damage, and more attack damage. All of these benefits are Reapers. The rest of the stats don't really matter because we are not dealing damage ourselves. The next item paired with our weapon is the Squire. This allows us to have 10 supported gems to boost our Reapers, increasing their damage by a shit ton. We will talk about the links much later on. The next item is the Dark Monarch and the Replica Dragon's Fang. These two items will allow us to double our minion count and to also increase our skill gem. This is quite self-explanatory, so let's move on. The following item I will be discussing is the boots. This slot is just a filler slot. I use it for resistance, some strength, life, movement speed. This slot is pretty flexible, so you can use it to fill in any stats that you are lacking. Finally, let's talk about the chest, the gloves, the belts, and the ring. The chest that we are using is Doriani's prototype. This item causes nearby enemies to have lightning resistance equal to ours. So the more negative our lightning resistance gets, the more damage our Reapers do to them. But how do we get negative lightning resistance? We use a ring like this. I got this off from trade, this bone ring off from trade. I got a ring that has minion damage, minion life, and tier 1 lightning resistance. Then after that, I YOLO a reflective mist and got this ridiculous ring that you see over here. So together with the Calandra's touch, our total negative resistance adds up to -200. That's the cap. And that allows us our Reapers to do serious damage to our enemies. However, our minions don't do lightning damage natively. The Reapers do physical damage. So in order to convert our physical damage to lightning, we will use the Triad's Grip Gloves. With all blue sockets, this allows 100% of our minions' physical damage to be converted to lightning damage. But the downside of using Doriani's prototype is that the negative resistance also means that when enemies deal lightning damage to us, we instantly unalive ourselves. So to solve that, we will need a roundabout way to convert all lightning damage we receive to other elemental types. I borrowed this idea from Gazi, so you guys can check his high-end Spectre build for more information. To summarize, we need a few key pieces. First, we need a glorious Vanity Timeless Jewel, and that would grant us the Keystone Divine Flash. Divine Flash allows us to convert 50% of elemental damage taken as chaos damage. So for our case, lightning damage is converted to chaos damage. Now we are just lacking the 50% of the lightning damage that we take. We solve that by pairing a Watcher's Eye, which has the following mod: 20% of fire and lightning damage taken as cold when affected by Purity of Ice, and together with a Sublime Vision, which converts the remaining 30% of lightning damage to cold, but restricts us to only using Purity of Ice as our only aura. All of this allows us to convert 100% of the lightning damage that we take to cold, which means that if we were to use Purity of Ice together with the Sapphire Flask, we will be able to boost our maximum cold resistance up to 90% that you see over here. And the added advantage of this method is that we can also ignore fire resistance, as our fire damage is also converted to either cold or chaos. So as you can see, I have negative fire resistance, because at the end of the day, all we need is cold and chaos resistance to mitigate any incoming lightning damage. And how do we get chaos resistance? We get chaos resistance from the helmet, we get chaos resistance from the boots, And we also get chaos resistance by taking all of these talents, all these minion and chaos talents. And we boost our defensive layer by purchasing a Glorious Vanity, which provides us additional physical damage reduction and also giving us maximum chaos resistance. And to add on more defensive layers, we are also block capped. To achieve block cap, we are going to anoint Safeguard. We are going to be taking talents that lead up to Sanctuary. We are going to be taking Mystic Bulwark. And we are going to be tattooing some of our strength nodes to give us some chance to block attack damage. All of this together with our Necromancy and Ascendancy. This node here called Mistress of Sacrifice, where our offering also affects us. Since we are using Bone Offering, which gives us chance to block attack damage and block spell damage to our minions. And since our offering also affects us, that will cap out our block chances to the maximum. Now on to our Ascendancy and Bloodline of choice. Obviously we are Necromancer, that is self-explanatory. We get the benefit of generic minion life and minion damage. And since we are taking Bone Barrier and we have 10 Reapers, we will get the maximum 10% additional physical damage reduction, and that will add to our defensive layers. We also have Mistress of Sacrifice, as mentioned before. So this, along with Bone Offering, will help us cap our block chances to attacks and spells. As for Bloodlines, I'm going to be choosing the Lycia Bloodline. This Lycia Bloodline allows us to take Bitter Heresy, and Bitter Heresy converts Consecrated Ground to Profane Ground. But how do we get Consecrated Ground? We get Consecrated Ground using the jewel, Rational Doctrine. According to the jewel, we will have Consecrated Ground around us if Strength is our highest attribute. Since Strength is my highest attribute, I'm going to be having Consecrated Ground around me all the time. So together with Bitter Heresy, I will be able to convert all my Consecrated Ground to Profane Ground. Next is, according to the jewel Rational Doctrine, the Profane Ground effect that I'm going to cause will linger for 4 seconds. Which means that all I need to do is shield charge around and walk around to infect all the enemies with Malediction. Malediction comes from Profane Ground. As we can see, Profane Ground inflicts Malediction on enemies, and Malediction is quite a good debuff and buff for us because it reduces the amount of damage taken, and it also causes enemies to take additional damage. On top of this, Profane Ground also causes the minions to have Chaotic Might, and Chaotic Might causes 30% of physical damage to be dealt as chaos damage. So that is added damage for our minions. Last but not least, I also have the Bolted Faith over here, which triple the radius of our Consecrated Ground, which means that our Profane Ground would also triple in size. Finally, this is a Mage Blood build. But unlike other builds which need the Mage Blood to cap out their different resistance, all we need the Mage Blood to do is to make sure that our Sapphire Flask is on all the time, and all my other flasks is simply to provide additional protection against stun, against shock, and against curses. So together with the Mage Blood, and we can use a gem like this called Storm Shroud. So Storm Shroud modifies chances to avoid being shocked and apply it to all other elemental ailments. So together with the Mage Blood and our ability to avoid shock from our flask, we are able to achieve chill avoidance and ignite avoidance above 100%. We are also immune to freeze and shock due to the use of Tempest Shield and Arctic Armor. And since we're done with the gear, now we will move on to the links. For our main setup, we are using the level 21 Summon Reaper of Revenants. This will allow us to summon maximum minions up to a maximum of 10. And we are going to support our minions with Awakened Minion Damage support. That would give us increased damage and also +1 level to our minion skill gems. Next, we are going to empower our minions using the Empower support. And due to the Mirrored Weapon giving us an additional +1 level to Socketed Gems, our already maxed out Empower support will be increased by 1 more level to level 5. And that would increase our minion skill gem by 4 in total. The next gem we are using is Awaken Elemental Focus. Elemental Focus just gives us a lot of additional damage. The next gem is Awaken Elemental Damage with attacks. That would not only give us damage, that would also prevent our minion damage to be reflected, so we can do maps with the reflected mods. The last gem we are going to use is Awaken Melee Physical Damage. That would not only boost our melee damage, that would also give our minions 10% chance to intimidate enemies. So that is a debuff that we place on our enemies to make them take more damage. As for the other links, in the helm, I will be using Steel Skin. That would give us a damage absorption. And I'm going to pair it with automation so I do not need to click so many buttons. As for the boots, we are going to be using Arcanist Brand. So Arcanist Brand will act as our trigger and we'll be triggering 2 spells. The first one is Desecrate. Desecrate gives us corpses on the floor, and the corpses will be detonated and consumed using Bone Offering. And Bone Offering, as I mentioned before, gives us the additional block chance. So that would help cap out our block chances very easily. And lastly, I'm going to enhance all our skills with the enhanced support. So that will give us quality to all our gems, especially for Bone Offering, which will give us additional chance to block. And finally, I'm going to use the gloves to give us mobility. I'm using Frost Blink paired with faster casting. And this is just to serve as a mobility skill, so I can move around the map a lot faster. And since this is 3.27, we have access to graphs. So the 2 graphs I'm going to be using is the Draining Ash graph and the Jolting Ash graph. So there's only one reason why we chose these 2 graphs, and that is for the modifier minions deal additional damage. So in total, we can get up to 110% increase in minion damage. And that is the only reason why we chose these 2 graphs. Not for the additional benefits, but just for the increase in minion damage. That's it, guys. I can provide some footage of how this build performs in another video. Thanks for listening to my build guide, and I hope I didn't make too many mistakes. I've been playing Reapers for many leagues now, and I hope GGG buffs this minion. It deserves some TLC, and Reapers always seems to be ignored every patch. Hopefully, this changes in the future, and I'm looking forward to making more videos like this. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.